All right, good evening, everyone. We're going to get things going now. It's 6:30 p.m., January 5th, for our Town Council work session regarding the municipal CIP. First order of business is the pledge to the flag. Next on the agenda is the land acknowledgement statement, which I will read. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land on which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe whose land and water we benefit from today. Next, we have discussion regarding capital improvement program, fiscal year 23-24 through 28-29. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to the town manager, Jim Manning.
Thank you, Council President. I announced this last night, same as tonight. This will not be on public access TV because the town of Narragansett is showing their town council meeting, and they already had this booked, so unfortunately we don't have that. But it is being shown, it's being live streamed, and also it's on ClerkBase. So why are we here tonight? This is the Capital Improvement Program, work session number 2. For the town. Last night was work session number 1. For anyone that might have seen an old agenda, we flip-flopped. The school was supposed to do tonight, but they had a conflict with some scheduling, so we agreed to switch. So tonight is the town going over their capital improvement program. Before I get into it, I just want to make a general statement. So you should have this handout to the town council, and also the capital fund breakdown as a second handout that you can refer to. Before we get into the formal program, though, I just want to say a few words before I open it up. So it's a 63-page presentation, but don't get intimidated by that. It's very big print, so we all can see it, and we'll fly through it as best we can. Most of it, the vast majority of it, is for the directors that are here to go over their individual CIP. To start it off, I want to thank Brian Sylvia, who's to my left, who's our finance director. It's his job, but it's a tough job, and he did a great job preparing us for tonight. And he had, like me, he came in around a little later than I did, but he had a lot of catch up to do, and he spent a lot of time looking at a lot of different reference points to get to this point. Also like to thank Rose. Rose is his deputy. She worked very hard. She's here 12 hours a day, most days, just getting this done. So I'm very appreciative to them. You see all the directors here. I want to thank these directors. They work very hard, but that's their job. That's what's expected of them. But what impresses me the most is the quality of service not only they provide to this town, but the realistic expectations they have budget-wise, which was very evident to me during this process. As anyone knows, when you're doing a very complex budget, which this is, there's wants and needs. And you have to really struggle to find out what the needs are to best serve the people you serve, in this case, the residents of South Kingstown. But also, and you have to figure out what are the wants, and that, and really try and, so what do? We prioritize them. So the directors all come with priorities listed 1 through whatever, and the top 3 priorities are really the ones we're addressing. So we go through the numbers pretty quickly. We go through their needs, and they're very realistic. So what I found with these directors is there's no fluff, there's no waste. There was realistic expectations of what they could ask for, and they were honest. I really would like this, but I need this. They prioritized. And really it came down to the first 1 or 2 priorities were the critical needs of the town and the individual departments. No one came with unrealistic needs or expectations. They knew, they've been down this road many times, they knew what they needed to do to bring the best services to this town at the best reasonable cost. I want to thank the taxpayers. No one ever thanks the taxpayers. They're the lifeblood of the town, and no one likes to write a check every 3 months to pay taxes. But the people of this town, they pay a lot and they get a lot. And so I think it's appropriate to thank the taxpayers who, especially now in these very tough financial times, that are, we have a very high rate of payment in this town, which is pretty impressive. I'd like to make a statement to the taxpayers of this town. I know we're going through some difficult financial times right now, some people worse than others. I want to assure the residents, I want to assure the taxpayers that every dollar, every tax dollar that they pay is scrutinized to see if we can do without spending it or how far we can stretch it. The mantra here is we do more with less, every chance we get. Before we allocate money to pay things, we ask, how can we minimize what we have to pay out? And we've had some great examples in the past few months with grants, federal and state grants. And these directors, every one of them that came before me, the first question we'd ask is there another revenue source we can get this from? And in many circumstances, there were. There was money that came from state grants, federal grants, both, and we will continue to do that. Me and my staff, we both recognize how hard people work to pay their taxes, and we're very conservative in our spending, and we spend it like it's our own money. So I just want to assure all the residents and taxpayers that is the theme of tonight. Let's start going over. I will go over the first 5 or 6 pages, then I'll turn it over to Brian to continue with the real hard numbers. So let's go over the first page. So what is a capital improvement program? I don't have to read every line of it, but this is what it is. This is what a CI program is. It's updated annually, it's reassessed, and it's a financial plan that includes the project descriptions, the costs, and the sources of the funding. The first year is the capital budget, which is really the pay-as-you-go part of it. But it's really a 6-year plan on what the big needs of this town are and how we budget for them. That's really what a CIP program is. So how's the CIP developed? Next page. The department directors, along with the necessary department personnel, work together to develop their annual budget, their capital request, and identify new projects. The projects are ranked, prioritized. You can see what they are. Obviously, health and safety is pretty much number one of our concerns. Does it meet all the federal and state mandates and legal obligations? One of the CIP projects we're working on right now, the boat ramp, we did get some federal and state money for that, but just talking to the director, Terry Murphy, and the crowd, there's some federal and state mandates that we now have to meet, which could increase the cost of the boat ramp, but we're going to go back to the source and say, okay, we didn't know these numbers were this high, can we get more money in grant funding? But those are things that happen every single day. The affordability, preservation of infrastructure and assets. People pay good money for their taxes, and their roads, bridges, water supplies, everything has to be the best that we can bring them. What other resources do we have? Second to the bottom. Really, that comes down to like grants. What are the other resources we can get, revenue sources, to help pay for these CIP programs? And also, we have to measure every CIP. What's the impact by deferring this CIP? And all that is weighed, and then we come up with where we can really start focusing on what the priorities are. So page 4, the summary of the pay-go funding and timeline. I think these numbers are these numbers paint a picture of where we're at. If you go to the second line, the department request pay-go funding in 23-24. So what is that? So these are all the projects that the department heads came in with numbers attached to them that we had to start prioritizing and scrutinizing. So that number was $3,323,275. Total number of projects that every department head came in and was requesting some type of long-term funding or in the CIP. We'll go to line 3 there. What is my proposal? We really whittled it down to $1,898,125 as what I'm coming to you tonight for, to respectfully ask that you consider allowing us to budget that. Let's compare it to the top line. What was the adopted PAYGO funding in 22-23? It was $1,806,500. Of course, you always struggle anytime you're raising any amount of money from years past, and you really have to substantiate why you're doing it. I will tell you, even though it went up $91,000 approximately, in a 5% increase in the PAYGO, that to me is in the win column. And the reason for that is, we all watch the news, we all see what inflation is. These trucks that we were purchasing 3 years ago for $50,000 are now $70,000, $80,000, $90,000. The pipes that we're trying to buy, we're competing for other municipalities, you know, with purchasing pipes, fertilizer, gas, everything that goes along. I know some of those aren't CIP, but that is I'm pretty happy with that number, that it came in as low as it did. Let's go to the next section where it says timeline of events and the CIP adoption. These are the timelines that we gave, that we are required to bring to the town council. December 1st was the first CIP. You got a book from us that Brian and Rose prepared, and there are, you know, the numbers pretty much match that are here tonight that we're going to go over with you. January 4th was the town council. Last night, a presentation, discussion of the CIP with the school department, and tonight is the town council discussion with the town departments. On or before February 1st, the adoption of the CIP with a public hearing by the town council is next after this. Look at the funding sources. These are all things we know, but you can see everything we've talked about. Obviously, the biggest one is property tax support. We'll go to the next page, page 6, and this is where I will bring up the subject matter expert on budgeting and numbers, Brian, to start going over these numbers. And there is no question by anyone in the audience or by town council that we aren't prepared to try and answer.
Thank you, Jim. So on page 6, you see this is the general fund. I'm just going to go one by one. So the general fund, as Jim mentioned previously, is up $91,000. That's, as mentioned, an increase of 5%. Senior services is a decrease of $14,000 to $75,000. The recreation center, that's a new, proposed new CIP for next year at $20,000. The neighborhood guild is looking for an increase of $100,000 to $1.2 million. And the water enterprise fund is proposed at $165,000. And the wastewater proposed at $280,000. I'm going to stop right there for a moment because those are all of the items that are proposed to be funded through the CIP, and totaling those items together is actually a $49,375 reduction, or 1.34% from the prior year. The final item, the school fund, that is not actually funded. That would be funded out of those funds, 428 and 429. 428 is a school fund that is exclusive to the schools, and 428 is a town fund which has approximately $150,000, I believe, in it right now. So the school capital projects, as was talked about by Raquel last night, are not funded through this program. That's where I was noting really the top 6 items, which again is coming in just under $50,000 under the prior year. On the next page, this is a summary of the 6-year that is being proposed this year versus the 6-year that was adopted last year. So there is no change over the 6 years for open space, town affordable housing, or village improvements. Those are all remain the same at $225,000, $225,000, and $60,000. Leisure services, you're seeing a reduction of $377,000. That is predominantly related to the funding that was in last year's CIP for the Marina Park. I believe that was related to the boat ramp.
Yes.
So that was the final year of funding for that, and that's where you're seeing a reduction in leisure services this year. The other side of that, the bond was issued, so in 22-23, you're seeing a bond proposed of 86 million. That's 78 for the schools and 7.5 for the town. The 78 did not move forward for the schools, but the 7.5 did move forward and has been issued in March of 2022 by the town. So that funding is available to the town at this time for, as I was speaking to here, the leisure services. So that those funds are here, and that's why the bond is not listed any longer. On the general municipal government, you're seeing a reduction of 5.2 million, and on the projected costs and the municipal bonds, again, the bond was issued, so you're seeing a reduction there. That is related again to the bond being issued, and those funds are now available and on hand. On the school department, last year's CIP of 103,000, that was a breakdown of, within that was a proposed $85 million bond. There was a proposed future bond of just under 7.5 million, and they had, at that time, they had pay-as-you-go funding of 11.2 million for a total of 103,765,000. What is being proposed in this plan is a now proposed bond of 140 million, pay-as-you-go funding of 23,103,000, bringing the total to $163,103.
I just want to clarify something on this bond. That number is not carved in stone. You know, the town council is not, you know, no one's authorized that number. That is a number we're using, and Brian and I went back and forth on that. In December 1st, we gave you a book with that number in it, and make sure we're comparing apples and apples to what we have today. We're still using that number. For the record, we know that number is not the actual number that the town council has voted on, talked about, or so forth, okay?
On page 8, this is a listing of outstanding debt of the town. So within the current fiscal year, FY '23, the total debt outstanding is $15,841,000. That is inclusive of the guild debt and the enterprise fund debt. So general fund debt alone would be the $14,753,000, and you'll see that decreasing over time by 2029. That'll be cut almost in half to 8 million on the general fund debt, 8.3 million. So we have very little debt on the books. That is really a strength of the town, and it is reducing also rapidly. We are paying debt down, obviously, on an annual basis, and what debt we do have is nearing its end. On this page, page 9, this is another way to look at the existing debt. So this not only shows the decreasing existing debt over time, but also what debt we have. So there you have the guild debt that was issued last year. By the end of this next fiscal year, will be down to 840. That'll continue down to 590 by 2029. School debt, in the current year, FY '23, we're at outstanding 4.8 million, and by 2029, that'll be cut almost in half to just 2.6 million remaining on the books. Municipal debt is at 9 million by the next fiscal year, and will be reduced to 5.7. And the town's utility debt, water and sewer, will be paid off by fiscal year '25. As Jim mentioned on page 10, this was what was used at that time when the CIP was issued. So we had a placeholder here for 140 million for a school bond project. That is what's been included in the plan, but obviously we know at this time, as Jim mentioned, this could change, but we needed to have a placeholder. So just to walk through this again, what's being assumed here is a $140 million school bond project. Of that, as you see under the bond amount, the issue amount would be listed as $132,670,000. That is because roughly $7.3 million the town would be receiving as pay-go. It is assumed that this debt would be issued in fiscal year 2026, and the net principal and interest payments after the ride reimbursement would be just about 6.5 million in that range on an annual basis. On the next page, this shows you two things. One, how little debt, again, we have right now. This has been talked about a few times. I think this is a good gauge, because we've talked a great deal about the possible bond project of the town, as well as the bond rating. And this really, and again, that I mentioned before, the strength of the town being how little debt that is on the books. To see Moody's, again, they would like to see debt outstanding as a percentage of revenue less than 10%. In our current year, we're at 2.2. We are well under that. That is really a position of strength for this town. Obviously, however, though, if this bond were to be issued at $140 million in that first year, we would shoot up over that 10%. But again, as you see at the 140, that would be chipping away, and we'd probably be down. I didn't go beyond the 2029, but we would be down within a few years after that. But that, I think this shows both the position we're in and where we could go based on the bond. So I think that's a very valuable slide. We kind of covered this in the last, that future bond, but again, this is what was, what's being considered at the time of the CIP issuance, a $140 million bond, of which 132 would be issued and 7.3 would be funded as PAYGO. So this gets into the town's debt limit. Presently, the town's outstanding debt subject to the debt limit, and this is as of the June 30th, 2022 audit, is $2,149,000. Based on the reval as of December 31st, 2022, our debt limit is now $210 million. So we are presently about $208 million under the cap. And with that said, for any RIBEC issued debt, that could be exempt from our cap as well anyway, but we would be under our cap by a minimum $208 million by this year. This gets into our fair share development fees and what they are and what they're made up of and what purpose they serve. So this slide illustrates the motives and the basis of collecting fair share development fees and how these funds are utilized by the town. So the funding goes to acquisition of open space and conservation of land and to meet open space standards as described in the comprehensive plan of the town. On the next slide, we go into the change that would would go into effect based on the fair share development fees. So the new numbers, the estimated value of land per acre, that was, I received this information from our tax assessor based on the reval. That has gone up from 140,000 to 167,000. And the persons per owner occupied, that's taken from census data. So both the single-family household and the two-bedroom or less units are going up roughly $600. That is $648 on the single-family and $613 on the two-bedroom or less. And this slide here shows the open space over the last 8 years. You'll see I kind of go down to the bullet points or the highlight the most important ones. So the total acres. So from 2014 to 2022, you're seeing total acreage of open space going from 11,446 to 11,950. So that is okay, I knew I had that written somewhere, and I should have just done the math, but that's an increase of 504 acres in that 8-year span.
Took you that long to figure that out? You're scaring us.
I relied on the notes too much. I think at this point, we're going to ask the departments to come up.
Do you have any questions of Brian or me prior to our bringing the departments up?
Any questions from members?
I just had one question about the senior services fund, and then it said number 304, the capital improvement plan annual funding element was a decrease of $14,000. It was like maybe the fifth, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Page 6, slide 6.
Oh, sorry, 6,
Yep.
yeah, 6.
you.
So could you tell me a little bit about that?
I think,
Harry, that's part of that grant we lost and got back, is that correct? No? Okay. I'll let you do the talking. All right.
So first of all, the funds for the senior capital budget come from Fund 304, which is specific senior services fund. That is funding that. Every year, the council authorizes a certain amount of general fund transfer, and at the end of each year, if there's a balance in the senior fund, it rolls into that fund. It does not go back into the general fund so that we can essentially support a capital program. So what that decrease in 14,000 is, it really just reflects the fact that we've requested less on the capital side, but, and Councilwoman, you weren't here last year, but we did get extra funding last year through the equipment fund from another vehicle that went towards the van fund. So while it looks like we've reduced the capital funding, and thank you for noticing that, it hasn't been actually reduced, it's just reflects that we got more than we actually submitted last year.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll talk about the senior budget further into the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions from members? Mike?
This may be jumping ahead, I'm not sure, but going back to what you had listed as 3.3 million as to what the departments proposed, and then your 1.8 that you're submitting to the council.
Yes.
What were the projects that were deferred or not submitted? What I'm trying to get at is every choice you make to do one thing tends to be a no for something else. I'm just
Well,
curious.
without getting too specific, if I had the specifics, I'd give you individually which ones. But a lot of them center around vehicles. Like, you know, we were on like an 8-year plan, 6 or 8-year plan, replacement of vehicles. I kind of extended that unofficially to 10 plus. Obviously, if needed, we do it before. But so there were a lot of vehicles, but also I asked the directors to come in. I wouldn't call it a wish list, but tell me what you need. And they did, and they came in with a lot. And then we went through each one, and between me and them, we decided what was the best bang for the dollar for here for town and what they really needed. So they range from things like hard things like vehicles, mowers, to also to IT systems that we spread out longer than the 2 or 3 years. We also, there were some studies that some departments made, like planning made a recommendation for a certain study that was a substantial amount of money, and I'll let Director Rabbit get into that, but we, instead of putting it up over 2 years or 3 years, we spread it out over 4 or 5 years. So there was a multitude of things.
And there was a line item, 225,000 for affordable housing. What's that spent on?
That's a fund that they divert the fees for.
That comes from the real estate conveyance fees. Am I correct on that?
Yeah.
All right, that's fees brought in.
It's in the longer one.
I got a few questions for you, Brian. Page 6, the capital budget program. Now, I know some of these here sort of pay for themselves, the water enterprise fund, the wastewater enterprise fund. Those user fees pay for the capital expenditures here, is that correct? Which one of these, which other ones here also sort of pay for themselves within the fund?
Which are enterprise funds.
Just the enterprise funds?
Everything other than the general fund. The general fund is funded by the taxpayers. Every other one is funded by the fund that's being noted there. So whether it be 304 for the senior center or 308 for rec center, but those are all funded from the separate funds.
Okay, so everything pays for itself with the exception of the general fund?
Yes.
And the school fund?
The school fund, it would be coming from those funds. They don't have the funding in there.
Okay.
Those are not self-funded.
I also want to ask you something on page 11 here. We've talked a bit about the debt service as a percentage of operating revenues. You've told us before that once gross debt as a percentage of operating revenues reaches or exceeds 10%, that's when the bond rating is sort of considered potentially be lowered.
It's one of their criteria, yes.
Now, we would only consider facilities plan because we're getting the reimbursement. So I want to ask you, why don't they consider net debt service as a percent of general fund versus gross? Because really, I mean, what's happening in reality is we're looking at the net debt service.
I'll answer that, and then you can answer more. But I asked that same question, right? So, if we're getting 52% reimbursement or whatever, why is that included in our, in this calculation? It's because we're responsible for it, right? That's the bottom line. We are responsible. God forbid a state ever went bankrupt, it's going to fall back on the towns to come up with this money. So that was the explanation I got, that it's still, even though we're getting this reimbursement, we're on the hook for that money. So I'll let you get in more detail.
And that 100%, the other side of that is we have not gotten a concrete answer. I think we're going to have to go through a ratings review with Moody's to know. They're going to take into consideration a lot of aspects of the town when issuing this debt, this being one of them. But we have a nice story to tell. This town has a very nice story to tell. That's one aspect, and it will be considered. And when we last talked about this with our financial advisor, this new rating policy that Moody's is going through, I don't think too many communities have issued yet with school debt, at least in Rhode Island, that I don't think it's really known yet how it's going to go. This is came out in November, this new rating policy by Moody's. So we're not sure yet, to be honest with you.
It was like a moving target trying to get an answer. Yes. And, we wanted a number. Listen, our bond rating is one of the top 5 in the state, if not the highest if you use a different measure, right? So that means a lot, not just bragging rights. Every dollar we borrow is cheaper because we have the best bond rating. So, but we tried to get an answer from our financial advisor. It ran the gamut from $65 million to, I think it was $150 million or close to that. So we really need to sit down and really find out what that true number is. I don't think it's 65. But also, if we ever downgraded bonds from AA1 down to the next level, it'd be about a 0.2% increase in our cost to borrow. So on $10 million, it's an extra couple $100,000 a year, right? So.
All right, thank you, Brian. I got a few more. Want to go? I just got like 2 more.
Are they related to this?
Sort of, yeah.
Okay, mine are not, so
So
you,
the next page, you talk about the debt limit. Just want to ask you a little bit about that. Is that something that's limited by statute? You sort of explain that to us a little further? Slide 13.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So the debt limit is set by state law, and that is, so it's 3% of your assessed value. So based on where our assessed value came in as of 12/31/2021, have that right? Our new debt limit is $210,606,000. Obviously, a substantial increase from a year ago. A year earlier was $157 million. So the reval really saw a jump in value for the town. And as you see, the outstanding bonds payable at the time of the audit was $17 million. I think in here we were talking about a year later would be at 15. But of that $17 million, only 2.1 is related to our debt limit, because we have, again, quite often school bonds that go through Ryback are not subject to the debt limit anyway. That's why of the 17, only 2.1 is subject to that. So we are under the debt limit now by 208, and we could certainly have any new school project not impact the debt limit as well.
So state law limits a municipality to carrying debt, limits it to 3% of the assessed value in that municipality. Cannot carry debt in excess of that. Understood. All right, last
No
thing, I want to ask
obligation
you about the fair share development fees. Can you just explain how that works so we all understand that one?
Yes. So this is the calculation for the actual fee. So again, as I mentioned,
This is a fee on the developer?
yes, developer or a new build.
It's equivalent to the old days, like when I moved here, an impact fee.
so when somebody gets their certificate of occupancy, they must pay these fees to get it. That's what I read in here.
It is new construction.
So the CO is given to the developer, or the consumer?
The property owner.
Yes.
Okay, so it's passed on to the property owner.
Yeah,
upon
like when
their
I built my house 20-something years ago, it was called an impact fee, just the names changed. I had to pay,
They pay a fair share development fee and a real estate conveyance fee?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Yes,
Yes, yeah, I know. I think you're correct.
because it says that some goes to the state, some goes to the town, some goes to the open space. And some goes to
Got it.
affordable housing.
All right. Just going to confirm again.
What's that?
The consumer, when they purchase a home, they pay the real estate conveyance fee and the fair share development fee?
Yes,
I'm not sure about the real estate conveyance fee.
right here, Rory. That page, backside.
Rory, when a home is sold, the seller is responsible for the real estate conveyance fee to be paid with the deed recording
When it's sold.
when it's sold. These fair share development fees are assessed for new construction when someone pulls a building permit to build a home.
Okay. Seller pays real estate conveyance fee. Developer pays the fair share development,
Purchaser or developer. Yeah, the purchaser of the,
or the purchaser.
yeah, or the developer.
Build it into the price of the home is the
Yeah,
fees.
carries down. All right, thank you. Go ahead.
So that's where I was headed with my questions as well. So the recreational fees, because as I understand it, this is the department budget, so we should stay up here at the fees and the revenue side for a few more minutes. So the recreational fees that are collected, according to I printed the bigger attachment, it says the fund balance for the recreational fees is $843,000, and you anticipate income of $155,000, but you only have expenses of about $34,000. So what do you use, what is the rest of that money used for, and where is that held?
It's used for,
Do you want to
You know
answer
what I'm
that,
talking
Terry?
about, Terry?
So Terry is for everyone watching at home, she's the
Because
director
I-
of park, of
Just let me add one part, because I understood that fee to be to help us buy parks. It's not to fund the Parks Department, it's because we're adding more people and we want more park land. No?
The recreation impact fees
Okay.
are for expanding parks, developing parks. Excuse me, not for operational costs.
Correct. We're saying the same thing. It's to, because technically, as we build new houses, bring new families in, we're going to need more park space for those families. So that money is for park space, not park operations,
That's correct. It's not for annual operating costs.
right?
It's for development and enhancement or changes to parks to meet the demographics that are in the town. But it's more capital for acquisition or development.
So if I'm looking at this table, you need $35,000 for debt service, but there's a difference between what you collect and what you use for debt service. So what and where does the difference go?
That's a council decision.
yes, that sits in a side fund for the, I wanted to call it impact fees, the fair share development fees. So it sits in a fund for that. The funds get drawn annually for the debt service of existing open space bonds, but the balance is sitting in that fund for use as the.
expansion or purchase.
Yes.
So,
So for example, Councilwoman, if I may, Noyes Farm,
yes,
that's an example. We have that property, it's undeveloped right now. We have a master plan for it. That would be what I would consider eligible for recreation impact fees to develop that property.
okay. So we have $850,000 sitting in that account right now, waiting to use at Noyes Farm or some other piece of property that we have?
Yes, and I believe the council did authorize use of some of that fund, some of those funds for the boat ramp project as well.
Okay. So my next question, is in the same section, the Village Infrastructure Fund. I don't really recall, and I don't really recall having that conversation last year But it sounds also like it's written like it's new this year, so I'm confused. So it's on the very next page of, it's 3-12, long-term debt management. Also, the establishment of a new fund, the Village Infrastructure Fund, to support matching grants for infrastructure projects proposed by citizens and civic organizations that otherwise meet the requirements of the town capital budget program. Is that new? And I'm just wondering, sorry, Terry.
I'm sorry. No, that's not new, but it's building up funding for village infrastructure, for the council then to be able to allocate funds for village infrastructure projects. I believe that was established under,
So, because I don't really remember that last year, but then I thought we have already allocated millions of dollars under the ARPA funds for village work.
this is separate from that.
Yeah,
And that was established, I think, just before COVID. So it was to start a fund to assist with village infrastructure.
so it's not new this year, this section just didn't get.
That is not new.
I see that here, because, so I knew it wasn't new, but it's just confusing to me, and then I guess it goes back to the ARPA funds that we have allocated millions for this very purpose. And 10,000 is this much, and I think we put 3 million in village economic development, so we might want to think, it's a small amount, but we might want to think about not continuing that and putting it on pause until we've addressed the ARPA funds. Just my thinking.
So what I would say to that is, looking back, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we did put a ton of money in the villages now.
Yeah.
But one thing that these funds do, and what I've learned the past 8 or 9 months is, it uses leverage. So we have to put up money to get money on these grants and federal funds. It's a nominal amount of money, but like when we put in for the boat ramp, these federal agencies, these state agencies want to see skin in the game. You can come and ask all you want. If you're not putting up a substantial amount of money, they're not going to match it. So looking back, if we knew the future, that we were going to get this influx of $9 million to allocate towards villages and everything else, yeah, okay, it made sense. But once again, that fund, it's a small amount, but I think maintaining some type of money going in there is used as leverage for future spending, whether it's 10 years from now or whatever it is.
So you see those funds as used as leverage to get other grants? You don't, because what could someone do with $10,000? Like,
We don't know. It could be signage somewhere that might cost $40,000, but we put up 25% of it. It's all these grants we apply for are like 75-25 match, 90-10 match. But one thing's for certain, you're going to put money up to get it.
I understand.
Yep. But that's a good example. I mean, if you could go back in time and look and see we're going to get this influx of money, then you wouldn't put that money in that fund.
Any other questions? All right, Terry, go ahead.
Just
Oh, go ahead, Deb.
one more question. We're still with you, Terry. So on this page, it says, since last year, the town has gained another 92.08 acres. I just don't recall acquiring any land in the last 2 years other than the Noyes Farm. Is that old, Miss?
Excuse me. I'm not aware of additional acreage, but it looks like Jamie is, so.
Okay.
I was going to say, I received this information from planning, so I was hoping Jamie could help us out.
So again, thank you. Good question and good catch. Some of that is associated with the recalculation embedded data available to us within our system. There are a few what we call GORs within a system if you have a larger tract of land that's 100 acres. And we refine our system on calculating that perimeter, and we find out it wasn't 100, it was 110. But slowly over time, things as simple as the village at Curtis Corner, which almost 40 to 50% of that development is in open space. So that gets added incrementally. So the number doesn't represent a complete acquisition of that entire acreage. Some of it is the calculations that we undertake and also the classification of prior properties into a different category. So we didn't magically find 92 acres or acquire 92
Well,
acres.
Nor did we have a party or a celebration when we got more open space.
Correct.
So I was just like, where was I?
So, good catch, Deb.
Thank you.
Good.
For now.
All right, Terry, go ahead.
Thank you, council members, for allowing us to present our capital budget for the Parks and Recreation Department this evening. I know you have a lot of difficult decisions to make over the next couple of months, and what I'd like to reiterate what the town manager said, which was we really look at prioritizing our projects. We are fortunate to have beautiful facilities and parks within the town and a great staff that maintains them every year. And what we try to do is assess every year and reprioritize as we go along. We know that demographics change, demands of the community change, and so what we've done this year is, as Jim mentioned, we did submit our wants, and then we went back and removed some of the less prioritized projects. But just as an example, we had proposed a townwide park master plan to be incorporated. Now, we know that that's an expensive, an expensive project, $50,000 potentially to have a townwide park master plan, but we also understand that parks are an important part of the quality of life in South Kingstown. And down the road, we didn't take it out, we left it in, but it's out in outer years of the 6-year plan to try to incrementally fund it. So that's just an example. I will move along. I know there are a lot of projects to get through. So for the Parks Division, we have a total of $220,000 proposed for FY '23-24. Slide, please. The first is for Old Mountain Field. You are all, even our new council members are probably familiar with the need for Old Mountain Field to have a new restroom and concession building, among other upgrades. We are proposing for an additional $50,000 to be added to this project. We do have a reserve fund for this project. We also have funds coming from the rescue plan dollars and the municipal bond. We anticipate that the concession building and restroom will cost in the vicinity of about $800,000 when all is said and done. The council did authorize a contract with a engineering and consulting firm, and they are beginning work on the master plan for Old Mountain Field. The other piece of this, why we requested $50,000 for '23-24, is to include much-needed redesign of the circulation in the park in terms of parking and accessibility, walkways. We see it every 4th of July when we try to have folks come in that can't necessarily ambulate up the hill to right field to watch the fireworks. But so that's what we're asking for there for Old Mountain Field, is an additional $50,000 in funding there. If there are no questions,
I just have a quick
and I'm sorry.
When do you think that project will be completed?
Well, we're looking at a timeline with the engineer going through at least early summer in terms of finalizing a master plan. So realistically, probably 2024, 2025, maybe even. But I'm sorry. I can't really put a pin in that, but we would like to get it done sooner than later. Obviously, we know it's a high priority, so we're really interested in getting the public input. Stakeholders will be involved in this project so that we can put it on everyone's radar right from the get-go. There are no questions? Slide? And before I go any further, I'm sorry, I neglected to introduce our park superintendent, Rex Eberly, is here with me also. Rex and his crew are the, the force behind maintaining every park and facility in the parks in town. And he does an awful lot of work in guiding and really identifying what the priorities are in the parks. So Rex is here to answer questions as well. We are requesting an additional $20,000 for the Saugatucket Park basketball court replacement. You are maybe aware that we have that project in the pipeline as well. There's been some interest through the Economic Development Committee, and we revisited the project after we had already received a grant from DEM to have a master plan done that brought it back to the original Olmsted Brothers design. And in doing so, it requires more tweaking of location of a basketball court / pickleball court, a rain garden, stormwater management, and the like. So we are looking at an additional $20,000 in order to get the basketball court relocated. If there are no questions?
Just before we go on, some of these projects got ARPA funds, and to me, I feel like when we did this in 2020 or 21, we were presented with these very big buckets, and we presented it very broadly. And now it feels like we can't really just shift that money over to you. Like, I feel like we might want to revisit where the money was spent. There's people who have no idea what are in these big buckets, and then to maybe sort of make some adjustments. I mean, for Terry, she's asking for $20,000, and it's going to come out of the CIP, but wouldn't it make sense to just maybe look at all of the ARPA funds and tweak it that way, much like EMS, which will come up, and we've allocated $1.1 million from the ARPA funds. If Craig says, whatever, the building now costs 20% more, why wouldn't we just maybe try to make some adjustments to the ARPA rather than rework it through capital? And then we could bring people up to speed. This is a small thought process that would take some time, but in a future meeting.
So Brian, that leads me to a question for you. If we had amounts in the CIP, let's say we passed the CIP, right? And then as we work through the ARPA, we decide, we want to fund this more quickly with the EPRA funding. Now, this would essentially alleviate the amounts in the CIP and free them up, so that wouldn't pose any budgetary problem, right? Because this is a planning document. We reassess annually. So now we know we've paid it through another source, no longer needed in the CIP, so when we review the CIP next year, just sort of get rid of it.
Right.
So really, it wouldn't pose any problem if we sort of left it in the CIP as the planning document, decided to rather fund it through the APRA monies instead. It would just sort of change the CIP going forward, which is normal, because the CIP changes regularly.
Other than one, it is on. Just what gets adopted in the CIP does go into then the operating budget. So that would just have to be, if there are changes at that point, we'd have to account for that when we're adopting the budget. But yes.
Does that pose problems to you as the finance director in managing the budget? Like, say we have numbers in the CIP now, then we decide later, we'd rather fund this through APRA money. Does that pose any problems to you managing the budgets?
No, as long as there's a paper trail,
Right.
we can do that. There just needs to be a quick.
I just had one question on a totally different idea, but as far as the restoration of the old Mountain Field buildings, this seems to me like a once-in-a-generational opportunity and something that maybe we could do some fundraising, like sell bricks or something, like different teams or individuals could sponsor part of the renovation that we do to that concession area. I've seen it done in other places where, there's memorial bricks that are, sold for a library or something like that. It seems like there's a lot of goodwill associated with that particular property that maybe people might want to memorialize, like a coach or something like that.
I don't disagree. I think we've had a lot of projects where we've had interested groups fundraise. What I would say is, we're probably going to need more money when we get towards the end of this project, that we may want to mobilize or reach out to community members. If there are things that we hear from our stakeholders that say, we would really like this, but it doesn't fall within our budget, I agree. I think that might be something where we could consider fundraising through a nonprofit.
Even as part of our 300th year celebration, I think we could generate a lot of excitement, I think.
Thank you for the suggestion.
So just to return to where we were, just for a second, I appreciate what you're saying, Rory, because I do think it sounds like we can keep some of these as placeholders, but you feel like I do that we should revisit the ARPA money, sort of reorganize, not create new buckets, but look at make some adjustments on the buckets. Because if Terry anticipates needing money, we could do a shift. And I think we should look at the EMS, because I personally think they're going to need more than 1.1 million just based on construction alone. And so I think maybe at a future meeting, we need to have that conversation, because
And there's more money to deploy based on the reduction in the consultant fees, right?
Yeah, so there is, it's a couple $100,000 less that we're spending because the government relaxed some of the restrictions on how to spend. Now they want you to spend it. But one thing I would caution, ARPA money is one of the areas we're looking to really leverage. So the $3 million that we're putting into the downtown down here, for example, is something that we could get up to. We're applying for a lot of federal funds. We could get up to
4 to 1 now.
$4 for every dollar. I'd be happy with $1 for every dollar, but, so we're really trying to leverage this ARPA money and do big projects and bring in federal money towards us.
Exactly. I think the complexity of what we created with the ARPA is a hindrance. You're nodding, Jess. I think that we created a lot of projects, and it's a lot. And so by reorganizing slightly, tighten it up, and, if Terry got 100,000, maybe she just gets 120,000, and then it's, instead of 19 projects, it's 14 projects. I mean, I don't know what the leader's thinking was then, but knowing now where we're at, I think we're better off getting a bigger project and leveraging.
I think that is, a lot of it too, is we didn't know quite where we were at or how long this was going to go on for or what we were going to need at the end of it. And so to your point, I do think it's worth taking another look at that and seeing what we can leverage here with this too.
So at a future meeting, Jim.
It's on the list.
I know.
I have one question on it, but I'm in agreement. I think it's worth having a discussion. There may be projects that we can fast track. But aren't we also on a clock with the ARPA money?
We are. But I think it's 3 years. 3 years to spend it?
2020.
Jamie's,
I think it's 2020.
Jamie's hint a lot of it. How many years?
Have we made commitments at this point to specific?
We're in the planning stages now to,
We have spent some of the money.
once again, it's this circle we travel that, to get money, we have to give time as well. So this big grant we're applying for, which is safety improvements on roadways and lights and everything else, we have to go to another state agency to get that, and that's about a year out, but,
The reason I raise the time concern is if we're going to do this at a meeting, it probably should be, I would think, in the next couple of months while we're doing the budget. Make sense?
Well, I mean, we can always keep these in as placeholders. We don't have to, I wouldn't
But
say that I don't want to rush it, but I also want to move with some sense of urgency. Yeah, but we do have the ability to keep these in as placeholders, so it's not, I think, as imperative as finishing it while we're working on the budget. Does that make sense? Maybe.
So the capital improvement plan is going to be passed by February 1, adopted, in place. So that means January 23rd meeting, we're going to take that up with a public hearing. So the pay-as-you-go included, so the first year spending, the pay-as-you-go as part of the CIP, that's going to be essentially through the operating budget, which we enact April. So that's the only thing that's going to be sort of hard to figure out, because if we're already committed to spending the pay-as-you-go monies, and we haven't figured out all the, ARPA monies, how to spend those yet, then those are sort of off the table, correct? Because we'd already be factoring that into the operating budget.
The only thing I would say is, the projects that the town council designated a year ago, whatever time it was, there were 21, I'm not sure exactly what they are now, but some are small, signage on the bike path and stuff like that. But I don't know if 2 months, I think we're pretty much into some of these bigger projects, and we've applied for grants based on spending that money. So I'd be a little leery about pulling it back. Once again, I'm trying to leverage a lot of money for what we're spending. Now, the stuff like, whatever that number is for streetlights and bus stops and all this other stuff, in comparison, when you're looking at that $9 million that we took in, it's a small amount. We can always reallocate that. But my recommendation right now, that's a much bigger discussion. If the town council wants to change the priorities of the ARPA money, then we can absolutely do that. I think it's going to take us more than a couple of months to shift gears on that.
I'm inclined to agree with you, Jim. I think that, not to throw a wrench in what we have going on. It's important for,
We're just getting,
Follow
for
through and
example,
then-
we're just getting some plans now
right,
that show the villages, and they're beautiful, right, with the gateways to the town and the infrastructure. But once again, these are safety improvements we're making on the roads and signage and lights and everything that I'm fairly confident we're going to get some good money in from the feds on that.
I'm not necessarily saying redo it. I just think that some of the, if Terry needs an extra 20,000, I'm sure it's there, as opposed to, and to looking at giving some more to EMS out of ARPA, because, well, I didn't approve the consultant for 500,000, it's now a little cheaper, so there is some wiggle room, and that, we should try to just push that right back out to some of these projects, rather than charge ourselves as taxpayers.
Make sense? All right.
So- I think it would maybe be helpful to the new council for you to either brief them on the projects.
I agree. As you're talking, the new council should be briefed on the projects, the status, and where the money is going. So
Yeah.
we'll do that in the next few months.
and us too, I think, it'd be good for us to have,
Yeah.
to have an update on that.
Maybe during a work session before a town council meeting, you could do a little presentation.
Put that right on the list right now. List is long.
It's like Santa and the long list. Sorry, Jim.
No, I agree. Every council, there's a couple of new members, they should know where this money's allocated, and the present council should know where they voted, where their money is.
All right. Terry, back to you.
Next slide. Next, we have Green Hill Park, and we have funds requested in the amount of $30,000 for repair of the tennis courts, 2 tennis courts at Green Hill Park. They are heavily used. They are in the cycle for resurfacing. And we also have $50,000 proposed for the replacement of the composting restroom at Green Hill Park. That's been there for 20 years. It needs to be replaced. And we know we can't wait on that one. So those are proposed for Green Hill Park, if there are no questions. Next. We have Fagan Park Playground Equipment Upgrade. Fagan Park is on the bike path in the Peacedale area, and the play structure it does require some upgrades, so we are seeking $20,000 to help replace some components. Rex and his crew do a good job in doing the replacements themselves rather than replacing the whole play structure. So that's what we're looking for Fagan Park. Next slide. We have West Kingston Park. This is $10,000 proposed for the wood split rail fencing at West Kingston Park, which, as you can see by the photos, is in dire need of replacement. Next slide. The park irrigation system, I'm going to let Rex tell you just a little bit about the irrigation system and the history on it. Rex, if you want to give the council a little brief summary?
So we have irrigation on all of our athletic fields, which is critical to maintain safe playing surfaces. Not only, it's not about keeping the grass looking pretty and green, but pretty and green grass is safe grass. And we've actually been able to show that fields that we've been able to keep in tip-top condition, we've shown a reduction in injuries to athletes on those fields. And so a lot of all of our irrigation systems are over 15 years old and require pump replacements, require meter replacements and zone valve replacements, head replacements on a regular basis. Up to a well pump could be anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000 to replace. So this is really an ongoing fund. So when we do have a major something like a pump or several zone valves or something we need to replace, we have a balance there that we can use to replace those items.
We are proposing $10,000 to go into that irrigation fund for 23-24. There are no questions. Next slide.
Just one quick question.
Oh, sure.
I'm just thinking of a conversation that we had a while back, and South County Youth Soccer had mentioned that they had a significant amount of money that they would like to work with the town to fund repairs at athletic fields. I'm wondering if some of that could be used for irrigation, especially, they use Tuckertown Park all the time, and several others as well. So I'm wondering if there was any follow-up with them about, I think it was maybe close to $500,000 that they had wanted to invest.
Yeah, I actually we had a meeting with representatives from South County Youth Soccer and our turf consultant that we hire. And we looked at Tuckertown Field. We came up with a plan of reseeding, aerating, slice seeding, fertilization, and they are going to contribute to some of that. They were thinking originally in the conversation, they wanted to invest $30,000 in a kind of a reconstruction. In looking at the field, it doesn't need that. It's really more of an increased maintenance program. And we did do a bunch of work this fall. We did a bunch of aerating, slice seeding, and I think we're going to see a great improvement in that field in the spring.
Okay, just want to make sure that we're taking advantage of as much as they want to offer us.
Yep.
Thank you.
Next slide. We have $20,000 proposed to be allocated for the park tree management program as well, and this is another high priority, ongoing project. You all know we have old trees in our older parks, particularly Old Mountain Field. We've seen what happened. This photo in this slide is from the Village Green, so we need to have a fund available to be able to address and try to get ahead of it. We have the contractor, the engineer for the Old Mountain Field Master Plan has done a drone flyover of Old Mountain Field already, and will be identifying, Rex had spoken with him about actually incorporating that into the project, is identifying the tree inventory and really figuring out what needs to go and how we have a plan to replant at Old Mountain Field. So we have $20,000 proposed. Is it 20 or 10 now that I'm looking at that? 20, okay. Next slide.
Could I just ask you a question about the tree removal? I'm just wondering if there's any plan for what will happen to the wood, if any good hardwood that's left from that. We've lost a lot of trees in our property, and I had them cut into sections and have been donating them. And I've spoken with Tri-County, because they do a lot of like heating assistance. So if we could use that wood and get it out to people that are struggling to pay for oil or whatever, Yeah,
typically when a tree is removed from the park, a lot of times when I hire a tree company, they'll leave logs there on the ground for a day or 2 or 3 days, and sometimes people come and take it. What we don't want to do is start encouraging people to bring chainsaws into the parks, cut wood, load them into their trucks, and now we've got a huge liability in the parks. Typically, what we try to do is remove that wood from the park. It usually gets taken back to the highway garage. A lot of it is rotten wood. By the time, if we're taking down a dead tree, it's usually insect infested, it's rotten, and it's not really good hardwood for burning.
If there is some good hardwood, could it be brought to the highway department and then maybe somehow, I mean, I do understand what you're saying about the insects and,
Yeah.
but if there's, anything decent.
I think that would be a whole nother program that would be through, the Department of Public Works.
Right.
If there was some kind of a firewood program set up or whatever, I can't really answer that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, thanks.
Slide. We have the Town Beach Improvement Program. Each year, we request funding for this as well, because as you all know, in the spring, we do our best to get the beach to a place, and we hope that Mother Nature does most of it, but we bring in sand replenishment for the Town Beach area, and we're proposing $5,000 for sand replenishment and $5,000 for replacement of shingles on the pavilion roof. I'm sure you've seen photos recently of what the Town Beach looks like. It's not great, but we do every winter, in early spring, we do see a return of sand deposits, but it's never as much as was there the last year. So that is a much bigger issue, and $10,000 a year is not going to solve our beach erosion problem, but we are able to replenish sand each year and continue to have a town beach operation. We may, sooner than later, need to move the playground, which is next in line for being inundated. So if there are no questions, next slide. We have the Riverwalk Park fence. This is the fence that is right along Riverwalk Park, which is adjacent to the town parking lot and the Saugatucket River. It is a metal fence. It has lost most of its paint and is in very poor condition, so we are seeking funding to take care of painting that and bringing it back to a presentable condition. Next slide. Next, we have the Equipment Acquisition and Replacement Program for the Parks Division, and Rex, if you want to we can go through this. It's $33,000 total, and we have 2 items, so I'll let Rex describe what items we're requesting funding for.
Yeah, the replacement of the infield machine, it's a specialized piece of machinery that grooms all of our baseball and softball fields on a daily basis. We have 10 baseball, softball fields, and many, many days, all 10 of those need to be groomed and repaired to keep them safe for players. So this machine works from April 1st usually through October on a daily basis, in very, very tough conditions. I know it's a 2019, but it gets a lot of heavy, hard use. If this machine goes down and we have games to play, we don't have a backup piece of equipment to groom our fields, other than putting half a dozen guys out there with rakes to try to get 10 fields ready, which just isn't a good use of manpower. So we like to keep this machine, in good working order. And if we fund this now, we'll have to get one more full season out of it, and maybe a season and a half by the time we put one out to bid and order it and get it in place. So the 12-foot mower, this is one of our workhorse frontline mowers that mows all of our larger athletic fields. Once again, it's a very important piece of equipment to keep the guys efficient. And if this ever goes down, then we have a really, really hard time keeping up with keeping athletic fields and other parks mowed. This is a multi-year funding for this piece of equipment. These tractors are now up to about $80,000 a piece. So
I think that's it. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, one more. For the Harbor Master NRO Equipment Acquisition and Replacement Program, there's $25,000 proposed for a Boston Whaler Justice model. This is installment funding. It's approximately a $200,000 acquisition. This is the first year of funding for it. It's been in service for 22 years. The photo in this slide is the boat that is proposed for replacement. Our harbor master is not here this evening because he is at the Waterfront Advisory Commission this evening, so he couldn't be with us, but if there are any questions on this, this is proposed for replacement rather than replacing the outboard motor because the boat itself has seen its useful life.
The boat that we have is junk. And, we're a waterfront community, we need a boat. Now, I would say I've met with the harbor master. He's working very hard to try and get a port security grant. He writes one every year. I think he's written one 2 years in a row now. And really, they try and spread out that money, so I think it's important to put that money in there, and so that if we get a port security grant in 2, 3, 4 years, we got half the money down, once again, skin in the game. So I know boats are a touchy issue in municipalities, but we really do need one.
Any other questions for Terry? All right, thank you, Terry.
Thank you very much.
While Rich is setting up, I just wanted to draw your attention to the item listed on here for the TMDL, 75,000. That's an every other year item. That actually should not be appearing here. It's only on the slide. It's not actually in the plan, so this isn't going to be changing the plan itself. It's just on the slide, and it should have been. It's an every other year occurrence. So that, you'll actually see on the next slide, that is the total, the 748. So that 75 shouldn't be appearing. Just want to bring that to everyone's attention.
I'm not really sure what you said, but I'm just going to trust you on that because that didn't make any sense.
I can
see.
explain it a little further as well.
I see the 75 TMDL. Okay.
Good evening. I'm Rich Bourbonnais. I'm the Director of Public Services. With me also is Scott Brown, and he's our Highway Superintendent. So Scott's going to be much more versed in some of the equipment that we're talking about. So, the first slide demonstrates what we want to do for some of our roads. We've got arterial roads and collector roads that collector road that we're hoping to deal with this year. What Brian was mentioning with the TMDL, we've been doing regular yearly funding on the TMDL accounts. TMDL stands for Total Maximum Daily Load. It is it's promulgated. It's a value that's promulgated by DEM. It applies to it's generally speaking to the water quality of our water bodies in the town, and we like to address TMDLs throughout town. Right presently, we're working in Green Hill Pond, but what we're going to move to is an every other year funding, because the funding has been pretty good, and there's also been a lot of grant dollars available for those projects. So I don't believe, and I think we've talked extensively about this, we don't believe that it's required every year. So we're taking that off of there. It's just a leftover from a previous slide. And we'll talk again more about it next year when we have to deal with it. Also, you'll see projects that come in that we'll be looking for funding for, and we'll talk about it then more. So, this year, right now we're in 22-23, we're still dealing with Warden's Pond and Green Hill Beach Road, which will be done in the springtime. We're going to roll into taking care of Columbia Street and Liberty Lane. And when I say we're going to take care of, what I mean is that we're going to repave these roads. We're repaving them in place. They're in poor shape. That's what we're hoping to repave them in place. They're in relatively poor shape, and I think we can go to the next slide.
I just have a quick question on that. While
Even another slide. Go ahead.
I'm looking at Columbia Street.
Yes.
Does it make sense to do that when we may be renovating that whole area?
With the
in a
school.
year?
So So I did discuss that today a little bit internally in our office, but, that's an excellent question. And it's not, we have a little time to think about it. We don't know where that project's going. Columbia Street's in bad need of some work. If something happens on Columbia Street with respect to a school, it's going to be a couple years out. Columbia Street still needs to be addressed. Maybe it's not repaving the whole road. And if we start to see that perhaps what would preclude us from paving Columbia Street, in my opinion, would be utilities. If we're tearing up the road for utilities. We have an existing school, it's got an existing sewer connection, it's got existing water connections. So I'm not anticipating that building a new school there is going to require that type of excavation. The other problem with rebuilding a school entirely on that site would be the truck traffic, and that can be tough on a road. It's going to really cause problems to the existing Columbia Street, maybe not as much as if we pave that road. So it's something we have to talk about. And what I will suggest is that when you will see this again, I would suggest it's up to you, of course, but it could be left there. We can always look to a different road, but you'll see it again when we come in for an approval on a contract for that. And if at that time we think that we have to revisit that, then we certainly can do that. But it's an excellent question, and we've thought about that internally. And we do have a, go ahead.
Go ahead.
We do have a requirement that you can't cut a road after 5 years of it being paved. If there was some trenching done, it can be repaired. If it's torn up by a contractor, it'll have to be repaired. I mean, there are ways to get around it so that we could do it, but it is in really bad shape. And it might be that we do a portion of it and not some of the areas that are more critical to the school. We could do that as well. But certainly requires a little more thought as we get closer.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Just wanted to make sure that was,
That just was my question. When would we expect to have this come back to the council to approve the bid for it, so we would be paying attention?
Well, what we'll be doing is, we'll be putting these roads out to bid to a qualified contractor. We're also going to be putting out Warden's Pond and Green Hill Beach from last year's budget as well. So what will most likely happen is we'll straddle the new year with Warden's Pond being the first part, and then so you'll see it. And I would expect that it'll be in and around that March, April, May time period where you'll see this come up again, and we'll be looking for an approval on a contract with a contractor. We'll be putting it out to bid sometime in April, May,
Yeah.
perhaps.
It's a great question, because I think about, it's a bad road in bad shape, and then we're going to run heavy trucks on it and ruin it even more. So we just need to be thoughtful. So thank you for paying attention, and we'll be back around to it.
And we're certainly not in favor of you'd be amazed at how tough we are on some of these contractors that come in and do work on just a home, and they tear up our road. I mean,
know.
they're coming back and they're fixing that. So,
I know.
we're very cognizant of that, and it really is an excellent question. So we've thought about it a little bit.
But just to go back, I do get a lot of comments from residents who do complain about Columbia Street in particular. Like, they send me pictures of, get this fixed, and so thank you for at least addressing that.
And another part of this is are the sidewalks on the western side of the road.
Exactly.
So we really want to get that done as well.
Exactly. Thank you.
All right.
one other quick question. Just something to think about. On Green Hill Beach Road, I wonder if there is a way to widen it a little bit to create parking for coastal access. Just, you don't have to answer that right now, just a thought I had.
So what we do with this program, what we have done all these years, is pave in place. And the reason why we have stuck to that is, once you start widening it, you've got to address drainage. And it's not like we have a lot of place to do that. And to give you a good example, Old North Road is, as you know, Old North Road, well, you may remember, but Old North Road was approved the year before last, in the same process. But what we realized was that a big problem there is the road's very flat. The sides of the roads are somewhat elevated. Water is not getting off that road. So what we did was we worked with URI to come up with a couple of easements to allow us to discharge water to those areas. And they've been very, very helpful with that. These 3 drainage structures have cost us, money in design, a lot of years in, another year in permitting and design. And we're very fortunate in this case to have area to put it. And Green Hill, we just don't have those places to discharge water. But I agree that some of these areas are very narrow, and I'm just not quite sure in this process how to handle that, right? So it would be a much larger project is what I'm saying, yeah.
Thank you.
So,
All right. Keep going, Rich.
okay. So I think, Columbia Street and Liberty Lane are the 2 roads we're hoping to take care of. Liberty Lane, a little further out in West Kingston, in very, very tough shape. Anyone who's driven on it, these pictures obviously aren't representative of Columbia Street, but I think you have a good understanding. What we're planning to do in both these situations, what we normally like to do is, and when the roads are this bad, it's not a matter of just planing off an inch or an inch and a half. And resurfacing. It's a matter of grinding up the road in place. We'll regrade it so that it drains properly. Columbia Street will have to be brought down to that same grade because we do have a curb line to maintain. So we'll be removing some material and then coming back with 4 inches of pavement total. And we'll do the same thing effectively on Liberty Lane, but we may be able to leave a little more material. A lot of times when we leave the material compacted, it actually makes a much better road in the end. So that's what we try to do. But again, same width, same amount of impervious conditions. And I think we can move on to highway and what we're looking to do with equipment this year. So we have 5 pieces of equipment where we're partially funding. These are all based on multi-year. They're part of a multi-year funding process. And we can start. I think we can probably go to the next slide if that's okay, Brian. Thank you. We're looking to begin funding on a light dump. It's the second of a 2-year funding cycle for that. These light dump trucks are, what we'll be doing, we'll be trading in an existing dump truck to get to, in the purchase of this, if everything works out. These trucks, keep in mind, are used, an awful lot through the winter. They're carrying a lot of salt. They corrode very, very quickly. So although a lot of times these trucks seem relatively new, this is a 2013 International with 61,000. It sounds very new, but these are used in the most harsh conditions, and they're used solely on construction sites or through winter. If there's not any questions, so a street sweeper, we generally try to keep 2 street sweepers, going all the time. We've had some significant trouble with 1 sweeper the past couple of years. We're looking to phase that out and upgrade to a new sweeper. Sweepers generally run us. This will be I believe it's the first of 2 years, but is it 3 years? Yeah, so it's, but generally a sweeper can cost upwards of $280,000. So we're hoping to fund, $50,000 of that this coming year. We can go to the next slide, Brian. Thank you. Roadside mowers, we employ 2 mowers with the town. We're hoping to upgrade one of those mowers. And when staffing is available, there are periods where we do have 2 mowers out. I believe it was many, many years ago, like a lot of years ago, we used to have even upwards of 3 mowers. but we're able to, we seem we can do what we need with 2 mowers, and we want to kind of maintain that. Again, mowers, you know, they're either working, they're not working. I think this year we had a little bit of trouble with 1 mower. We were down to 1, maybe even none at one point. But we'd like to get back to having 2, and then when staff is available, we'd like to have 2 mowers out there. Grass mowing is a nonstop process. We are talking about 130 miles of road that the town has, and we'd like to keep it as you know, best maintained as we can. Wood chipper, again, 2 are what we'd like to keep on hand, and you know, we're in need of another one, so we're hoping to fund that this year. We would call this sort of that first year of a 2-year funding on that. And we'll go to the brining system. Now, you may have noticed over the past couple of years, maybe 3 years, we started pre-treating roads, okay? And it's really a great concept. Narragansett had been doing it for a little while, and we began doing it. What we're doing now is we're going over to Narragansett to get our brining solution. And there's a little bit of a bartering going on there, but they've been very, very helpful to us, but we'd like to have our own system. This would fund that system. The brining, and the reason why we do this is, there's a number of reasons why we do it. First of all, it sticks to the road really well, and it stays in place. When we just go out and salt a road, if it's not raining at that time, or at least something wet on the road, it doesn't stay in place. It bounces off, cars go by, and it blows off. And I'm sure you're all familiar with that when you drive on these roads. The salt solution sticks to the road. We can also do it during work hours. So we're not overextending our guys and paying money, frankly, to have guys out through the night to salt a road, only to be back for the plowing, right? We want them fresh and ready to go on plowing, because, as you know, some of these events they can be 20 hours long. You know, it's very, very difficult to have these fellows out on the road, or these people out on the road that are excessively tired, and this just helps preserve, I think, some of the sanity of our employees, frankly. So there's that. I believe that may be it, Brian. Oh, you want to roll right into? Oh no, this is okay. That's it. I'll be back for wastewater and water. Unless there are any questions, I'm sorry.
Seeing none? All right. Thank you, Rich.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome, Chief.
Good evening, thank you. So I want to thank you for the time for us to present a few of our projects. I know you have a lot on your plate and a lot to review tonight, so we can go right through it, and please feel free, any questions you have, I'll do my best to answer. So we start with, we have 3 reserves in the police department. So we have computer system maintenance, communications and dispatch, and then also building maintenance. So the first project is part of our computer system maintenance program, and at the recommendation of IT Director Lori Fox, 2 real projects that we really are looking to invest in. So this would be a reserve for this year, this fiscal year, of $15,000 to support cybersecurity toolkit. And that would be basically for the IT department to be able to do remote monitoring of our network to detect any type of intrusions or attacks, and really kind of detect any type of threats towards the system. So obviously our computer system at the police department is extremely important for privacy rights and the records that we maintain there. So having this tool will be very helpful in So that would be a $30,000 project with 15 in the reserve. The second would be the server virtualization replacement, so keeping with the 5-year plan of replacements, it would be supporting that, and that would be a $50,000 expense that would be applied in the 27-28 year. Any questions on either of those? We can go further. The next would be our dispatch and upgrades to the dispatch center at the Public Safety Building. So we are slated for a telephone replacement. Currently, our phone system was installed, or last installed in May of 2013, so we're coming up on, or we are at 10 years of service. We'd be looking to upgrade our telephone systems to a voice-over internet protocol, which give it a little more flexibility with cloud hosting and improve the system. We're also looking to put a reserve in for our surveillance cameras, both exterior cameras around the Public Safety Building as well as inside, that monitors our cell block areas and different areas where prisoners are brought into the building. Oftentimes, we have requests from courts for discovery and different production of records that we must turn over, and our current systems is outdated. It was installed in 2009, so we're looking to improve that. Also, within our dispatch center, we're looking to have a reserve for display screens for dispatch. We have you walk into dispatch now, and there's a hodgepodge of different display screens. As new technology comes on forward, we add a new monitor and something else to watch. So having this upgraded display screen, we could segment a lot of these different video surveillance systems that we're watching and into one location on a wall, and the dispatchers would be better equipped to do that. One example of that is the DOT cameras on Route 1 and 138. So we have a lot of state roads. Those roads have state cameras that can be monitored to watch for traffic conditions. Really important, I think, during the summer months to look at, as an example would be up at the towers at Route 1 at 138 to monitor traffic in that area. So for our dispatchers to be able to view that on a screen and be able to provide information out to the officers in the field would be very helpful. And lastly is just a replacement of our voice recording system. So again, that comes into our production of records, so our telephone systems, and so that would be needed of replacing. That was installed in 2020, so we're looking at 26, 27 for that, so it'd be about 7 years would be need of replacement. Any questions? Yes.
So, I'm just looking at the reserve fund, so you're asking to add, just so I understand this, $50,000 to an increase of $20,000. So last year, there was $30,000 designated, now we're giving you 50, and those are the projects that you're looking to fund relative to the communications equipment reserve fund. But I don't see them on the, am I missing, are they not on this list of funds? Fund balances?
So that is the police, public safety has it's in 408, public safety has a 408. Their beginning balance as of 7/1/2022 was 34,000, I'm sorry, and they got 25,000 in the current year, so they're gonna have a balance of 59,386.
What page are you on?
Page 2.
There's a number of Fund 408, so that's.
Yes, I'm sorry, the public safety one. It's the second from the bottom.
Yep, it's like, oh, well, there's 1,408,000 on it. This one says the summary of Fund 408.
That's all of the, yes.
Oh. So it has undesignated fund balance of 59,000?
I'm sorry?
Is that what I'm looking at? So that public safety fund has just an undesignated balance of 59,000?
That's correct.
Okay. So all the rest of Chief's projects are funded away in some,
They will be funded within this fund,
within what?
this fund 408. If these projects are approved, this funding is approved, it would be within this fund.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, we can move on then to building maintenance. So we're asking for a reserve of 45,000 to be applied to the building maintenance reserve. First would be for security fencing, gates, and signage around the public safety building. Currently, the property has two entrances, one off of Kingston Road, and then also off of Curtis Corner Road. Oftentimes, we have cars that are cutting through to avoid the traffic light at Kingston and at Curtis Corner, and a lot of just traffic behind the building, and it poses a security risk, I think, for us, where the police vehicles are there, prisoners are oftentimes brought in through the back of the building, so we would look to secure the backside of our building and prevent that access through fencing and just kind of harden it up as a facility. Weatherization upgrades, so there are 6 exterior doors and 5 garage doors throughout the building, and so that would just be really updates to the weatherization to those doors to increase the heating and air conditioning efficiency. The roof replacement, it's the original roofs from 1998 for the building, so that money would be placed in the reserve for a roof replacement in the 25-26 fiscal year. And then the last project would be a redesign of the parking lot. Currently, there are 2 parking. Basically, it's very confusing, to be honest with you, when you come to the public safety building, where the public's to park, where the police cars are parking. So we look to expand and potentially look at creating a parking lot in front of the building and making the front of the building more welcoming to the public. Oftentimes, you know, when I explain that I'm the chief of police of South Kingston, I have a lot of questions from people. Oh, where is the police department? And we have a beautiful building. I think oftentimes we're not displaying it to the public. So we would like to make some landscape improvements to the building to include easier access for parking and really have no question at all how to come in and obtain services from the police department. Any questions regarding that? So the last is a pay-as-you-go project. This would be a replacement of our total station, which is used for accident reconstruction or crime scene mapping. Currently, it was first purchased in 2015. We're now seeing that it's at the end of life and really not compatible with the new software that we have. It's making it very difficult for us in, you know, these cases that whether they are serious motor vehicle accidents or death resulting or even crime scenes, it's just very important that we have the tools, mapping tools to reconstruct these, to bring cases forward and really have the evidence to show basically what the scene was and how to reconstruct that. So this would be $35,000 for the purchase of the replacement total station. Any questions on that? So the rest is basically our breakdown of the expenses. Again, we're asking, you know, this over a 6-year period, but these would be the different projects, and I'd be happy to answer any questions as you look through that. You'll note that, you know, I mean, we look at it, it's $1.3 million, but there's some of the equipment that is in there, or the purchases that are in there, is we are looking down the road, and I'll give you an example of that, is the body-worn camera program. That's currently under a state grant program. It's for a 5-year period, but we are putting money aside, or looking at that, anticipating for, at the end of life of that program, if it doesn't get resolved with another grant, we want to make sure we're maintaining that program moving forward. So, but that's an example of additional grant money could be obtained, and that expense wouldn't be there.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the chief? Deb?
So when I went to the traffic forum in the fall, you and I had a little chat, and you talked about maybe buying a motorcycle, and it seems like the motorcycle is pushed out. Is that?
No, the motorcycles are moving forward. Actually, we'll be presenting that on Monday night.
Oh, okay, good.
So, but we're looking to lease the motorcycles as opposed to buy them. And
Okay.
so you'll see the motorcycles are on this list. And again, we're looking to enter into a 3-year lease, which many departments in Rhode Island do that. And as it's a new program, I think it's important for us to try to look at it as a trial as we go forward.
Okay, good. I thought it was a great idea, because I think in terms of
We're going forward.
flexibility to get in South County traffic on Route 1, get to an accident or get to
Yes.
somebody, that was a no-brainer to me, so I just wanted to make sure that moved forward. It is a lease.
Exactly. It'll be a 3-year lease, and great community policing tool, great for this,
Yeah.
I think, community. And with our Route 1 and the beaches, I think it's going to be a great addition to the police department this spring and summer.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the chief? All right, thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Craig Stanley, Chief of Emergency Medical Services, and thank you for listening to our presentation. Ours is pretty simple. For the next year, it's a monitor for the new truck that we're putting up and a CPR device, cardiac monitor. I've replaced those monitors. I've worked since getting here replacing them, so we're in very good shape. I don't see us needing to replace those. Their shelf life is about 5 to 7 years, so we're in pretty good shape. But this is for the new truck that we're going to be putting up. And if you've seen the news in the past week, you probably realize how important that device is. So ours is pretty simple. Historically, our capital budget has been replacing stretchers, cardiac monitors, and the CPR device. We are looking at vehicles, which we'll discuss at a later time. We got a bid in for some replacement for the ambulances, and that's going to be discussed at a later time. So that's pretty much it. Any questions?
Any questions for Craig? All right, off easy, Craig, thank you.
Okay.
We'll be back for you, Craig.
Lance Whaley, Fire Alarm Superintendent. Thank you for letting me present to you tonight. Mine is basically pretty easy. I didn't get a slide for the generator, but we were looking to purchase a generator for the backup. We don't have backup power at the new AT&T tower at the police station, and that's going to be a microwave hub for the new radio system. So we were looking to purchase a generator for that. The tower was free and the structure was free. We just need a generator to have backup power. And after having a consultant do an inspection of the existing tower at the police station, we found out that the bolts were rusted out, and we're looking to have those replaced.
Questions for Lance?
And the bolt replacement would be the first of a 3-year spread.
All right, thank you, Lance.
Lance, that $30,000 generator, we received word yesterday that generators will be covered by that hazard mitigation grant from REMA, so just look into that.
Okay.
So generators are a high priority on that list, okay?
You know, Lance, while you're here, I'll ask you about the cell tower, the radio interoperability there.
Yeah, we have constructed a new tower at Tower Hill Fire Station. It's up. We're waiting on equipment. There's a big shipping delay for some of this equipment. They're looking to have 2 sites up before the end of February, starting with Taft Hill and Mawtucket. They plan on getting out there in the next couple of weeks to actually start doing construction on that.
Excellent.
So that's moving right along. It's just shipping delays on equipment is a real issue.
Great. Thank you, Lance.
Good evening. So the library is pretty straightforward. We have 3 projects that are in their second year, and they are roof replacement at Peacedale, replacement at Kingston, and parking improvements. And then our only new project is a matching grant of $80,000 for an ARPA grant that we have applied for but have not heard back yet.
But we're feeling pretty confident about getting that grant money.
I am,
Yes.
but it's stuck with the feds right now.
Can you just describe, if we do get that money, can you describe a little bit about how that will change the Peacedale Library?
Sure, it's not going to change any of the footprint, so it would be a renovation of the balcony, and it would turn that space that is not used right now at all into a study space, a place where people could go monitor their health. We'd hope to have some kind of pod areas for privacy. Also a place where we could do classes, teach, that type of thing.
Excellent. When do we anticipate finding out on that? No real timeline? We don't-
Again, it's at the Treasury, so they say they are short-staffed. It is ARPA money, so there is a time frame on it. I'm not sure.
We've cleared many hurdles so far to get to this point. We had to get through the state vetting, then the feds, and they came back to us with a couple of recommendations, one of which was that there was some type of medical screening that would be done that in private for underserved people at the library. So we've met all the criteria, we're just waiting, and we're very hopeful. I don't think they'd lead us down this path this far and hopefully not get it, but it'll be a beautiful addition to that beautiful library. I mean, it's upstairs, it's in the loft area, it's really nice. But once again, that's a perfect example. You know, we need the 80,000 to get the 320 matching, you know, so it's like $4 for every dollar. So it's money well spent, stuff we would never be able to do without that matching money.
Thank you.
All right, any questions from members?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
It's funny, because like, as they switch over, like, you remember what we dealt with the last time with the library? There was the leak in the line in the road,
Oh,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And you just never get an update, and like, we hope we fixed it, but remember the slow leak? Like, it all comes back when they sit there.
So good evening. Luke Murray, Director of Administrative Services. In addition to the many hats I wear for the Town Manager's Office, I am the Director of Personnel. I'll start with saying that, Jim and I talk daily about, our employees and the fact that they're by far, beyond everything that you'll see tonight, our single greatest asset in the town. And I think we always agree on that, and we want to support our personnel, including the directors that are here. I have the privilege to work with them. We have an outstanding team. And since I got here about a year and a half ago, and since Jim has come on board, we've filled key leadership roles. And that was a big win for us. We have great leadership, but in addition, we have great employees. And that makes the wheels turn here for service delivery, which is what we're all about. This request for a compensation and classification survey comes from sort of my evolution since I've been here, of looking at personnel and saying, what can we do better? We've talked a lot about recruitment and retention. And I'm looking constantly at programs to recruit and retain because it's very difficult to find employees right now. It is even harder to find very good employees. We have great people, so we want to make sure that we're keeping them and we're fairly compensating them. Part of that is organizations, professional organizations, many of them in the private industry, do compensation and classification surveys to make sure that you're staying competitive with the industry and that you're aligned. And when questions arise from employees, like they feel that they may be undercompensated or challenging their roles, that we have documentation in place that we can say, no, we feel that you are fairly compensated in industry averages, so you're benchmarked. We have not done any benchmarking, not as long as history I've gone back. And over the past year, I've entertained over a dozen reclassification requests, either through the union or through directly department heads for non-unions. So, and many of them I've had to deny. I do my own salary research and we substantiate, but it would be extremely helpful to me and personnel to be able to say, are we properly benchmarked against other communities and fairly compensating? So that's where we're going with this. This typically is done by a professional company, like one such company is GovHR, which is a national company. They come in, they benchmark you against the entire state, they look at your region, and they would tell us where percentile we fit. My general impression is we're fairly compensated overall. It's really just fairness between positions and the roles, responsibilities everyone plays. But I want somebody from the outside to really tell us in a fair and equitable way, you know, where we sit. So that's what this is about.
So Luke, this type of study would take over a year to complete?
So no, it would actually, and I don't know if you have the updated, do they not have the updated? Yeah, that was a typo, okay? So I would move to get this done as soon as we get funding in the latter part of 2023, and we'd likely have it done in early 2024, so that is a typo. It would probably take 6 months, approximately. We'd go out to bid for a company and then have the study done, come back, and then review the results. That doesn't mean any of our contracts would change. It doesn't mean any of our non-union employees would necessarily change. We'd simply have a basis to review it and say, okay, what could we do better? The other thing I would like to look at is we currently have a step classification system, whether we should make sense to spread those steps or where do other organizations, how are they approaching that effort? Doesn't necessarily mean we're changing compensation, but how we go about the increments that employees step up in levels.
Any questions for Luke on this?
I just wanted to just update my slide, so it says Q1 2024, and it'll be done by Q2 2024?
So that is incorrect. So it should be Q3 to Q4 of 2023 to start, finishing up Q1 to Q2 of 2024. Did I say that right, Brian? Okay. Fact check.
All right, any other questions?
So Q3 of 2024.
2023, so current year. So essentially, if you were to approve this through the budget, I'd move directly to get this out to bid. And I would expect that by October-ish, we'd be able to have somebody retained and start the survey, and then early part of 2024, ideally get the results, let's say Q2 of 2024, actual.
So there's typos on the slide.
Right.
Yeah, I would just strike that. I apologize. I noticed that late today, and we made the update on, I think, up here, but we didn't update it on your slide packet.
So just a question, you're clearly management. Is this something that the unions also would like to have as well?
Yeah, actually, they're the primary pushers of this, because unions are about equity, right? Aligning people, making sure people are compensated, but also between the individual roles that they play, that everyone's sort of looking left and looking right and say, how do I compare to the person next to me? And, you know, there's, like any organization over time, there's moves that are made that may seem arbitrary or inequitable, and we're encountering a little bit of that. So I want to, you know, kind of settle some of these issues through this compensation study to say, all right, is it inequitable? And if so, can we make incremental improvements to realign? But without that data, I really don't have a roadmap to go on.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Luke.
Thank you.
Jamie, I think we got IT before you.
I'm jumping the gun. I'm not buying a dump truck, though.
I'd rather do IT than talk about planning. Thank you. Sorry. Lori Fox, IT Director. First of all, thank you for entertaining our projects this evening. I have just one. It's a 5-year replacement for our town infrastructure, which would include server and storage for all the town applications and files. So it encompasses pretty much all of our programs and software that run and service the community, that come in and pay taxes and pull permits and things like that. So it's a, as I said, 5-year replacement, and the ask is $70,000.
So how's use of the system been since it's been refreshed in fiscal year 18? More efficient?
It is. We actually, in 2018, went to a converged network. So before, you would have servers, and then you would have storage separately. Now it's basically one unit. And actually, we just migrated the police department to the same infrastructure. And we migrated all the servers, and they had no downtime.
Excellent.
During the day.
Nice. That's good. All right, any questions for Lori? All right, thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Again, thank you, everyone. Sorry to try and jump Lori this evening. With regards to the planning department, we have a request for funding to continue our regulatory review and expansion of making the system associated with land use applications more user-friendly and determining certainty along the application process. In doing so, our primary focus of this request is to look at developing design standards associated with the Highway Commercial District, associated with Route 108 and Old Tower Hill Road. Mr. Manning has mentioned tonight the importance of leveraging money. Last year we had $30,000 in our capital improvement program for starting this process. Since you put that money in our budget last year, we were able to do a grant application to the state. We originally applied for $125,000. We were going to match that with $25,000 of our SIP funds. The state grant application process was oversubscribed, so they reduced our grant request to $30,000, but again, we still had funds available, so I have a total of $60,000 in this year's fiscal program to then hopefully match with this additional allocation for a total of roughly $90,000 to move that program ahead.
And Jamie, if you get the funding, how soon out do you think this study would be completed?
I have a draft RFQ ready to go to finance, so that we're anticipating late January, early February to do a request for qualifications for appropriate design firms and code writing firms, and potentially have someone on board in March with a little bit of slippage, April, because again, I want to start expending those funds in this fiscal year and then have access to the additional funds in the next fiscal year. And then a year from now, I'll be sitting here before you with Mr. Manny's help, asking for continual support financially of continuing our improvements to our regulations.
Any questions for Jamie on this?
Good job.
All right, thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mark Capuano, tax assessor. Thank you for your time this evening and talking about the property revaluation plan that we have in front of you. The state mandates that we have is a revaluation cycle every 9 years. The town of South Kingstown just came off their actual full revaluation as of 12/31/21. So now the next cycle would be 3 years from now, would be what's called an update or a statistical revaluation. So there'll be 2 of those before the next full revaluation. So the dates would be 12/31/24, 12/31/27, and then the next full revaluation would be 12/31/30. So the number that you see up there, the 75,000, it basically level funds during that time period to enable us to be, financially ready to take on the state mandated revaluations. So just to mention too, the statistical or the update revaluation is less expensive, obviously, than what we would consider as a full revaluation. So that's all built into, our projections.
Any questions from members? Your job's going good?
It's going very well. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
All right, thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Good evening, Mark Rousseau, Facility Superintendent. What I'm going to present tonight is not as glamorous as antenna bolts, but I'll give it a try. So we've had a reduction in our ask this year of $14,500, or it's about 12%. The first item we're looking at would be to refurbish the town hall restrooms. This is a multi-year ask. With the 3 men's and 3 ladies' rooms in the building. The youngest one is 1989, and we're going to bring them up to code, ADA compliance. They get new sinks, new toilets, and some tile work. The second is a roof replacement on the annex, which is the hip roof, which is over finance. Excuse me. Has minor leaks, but we've been able to repair. But it needs to be replaced. It's going to be 40 years old shortly. Next is to replace the carpet in the town vault. We have asked to see if we could get that carpet stretched so we could make it last, but it's a double glue system, so it cannot be repaired. We have to replace it. And it's a trip hazard with the rolls that are in the carpet. And the last is the clock tower roof replacement. It's got shingles that are cupping and curling. We get water infiltration and an occasional bat, so that we have to remove. Those 2 items, the carpet and the roof tower, clock tower roof, are pay-go. They're important to get done this year. In our equipment schedule, we're looking at a new 3/4-ton pickup truck with snow plow. This is a first of a 2-year request. We have this truck on the schedule because one of my vehicles broke down. So, and I'm using my own vehicle right now, driving around town, doing town work. So we've also reorganized the facilities department. So we're better leveraging the employees that we have to do maintenance work in buildings. Instead of being localized in a single building, they now go to multiple buildings to do the work that they can do the best. So we have to get them there. So that's an additional pickup truck. And finally is the Nifty lift, looking for an additional $15,000. We had started a budget for this in 2019, and we budgeted over 2 fiscal years through the pandemic. And we went to bid last June of 2022, and the prices came in 30% higher than what we had in budget. And that was due to steel costs and delivery. It would take 18 months to get this piece of equipment, which again it's a buy energy, so it's diesel and electric, so we can use it indoors and out. We recently had a major repair at the rec center. We had to borrow a lift from the school department. It's just a scissor lift, just went up, and it's really not very safe to do that kind of work. But this will enable our staff to work inside and out in buildings safely with a harness, and they're strapped in. So if anything should happen, it is a nice piece of equipment that can be used in multiple departments, not just in facilities. That's it.
Questions for Mark? All right. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Oh, wait, where's Susan?
Hi, Susan Damasi, Director of Senior Services. Our first thing that we're asking for, our building's going to be 23 years old in October, and it's been kept up very well, but things are really starting to get old. So we are putting in requesting $15,000 for exterior paint and shingle stain, as well as $10,000 for the start of replacement of carpets and blinds. The blinds are pretty much broken in most of the offices and classrooms. We're also starting an Adult Day Services Center Improvements Fund. You know, St. Elizabeth's took over the adult daycare in 2021, but we're still responsible for and own the building. So we'd like to request a $10,000 amount to go towards such things as siding, roofing, things that we are responsible for as owners of that building. And we'd also right now we use a 2003 van as our backup van to our 2011 van, which is used for transporting senior residents to and from the senior center and for shopping. And it's more and more, it's in the garage for service. So we are hoping to, we're requesting another $40,000 towards the fund, which hopefully would be completed in the 24-25 year, so that a new van could be purchased, and then the 2011 van would be used as our backup van for service and whatnot. Any questions?
Any questions for Sue?
I just had a question about St. Elizabeth's. I just can't remember how long are they, how are we
It's a
gonna lease?
3-year lease.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're on their beginning of their 2nd year.
Thank you.
Yeah, and they're doing well, and we have a great relationship with them, so it's going very well.
That's great.
Yep.
Can you tell me where the St. Elizabeth's facility is?
Yeah, it's on Post Road. I think it's 283.
283, yes.
283 Post Road, as you're heading towards Route 1. You know where Tuckertown Road is, it's just past that.
right next to New Life Assembly.
Right, and
Okay.
Kane Daycare is behind it.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sue.
So, Susan, I'm so sorry.
Sue, could you come back up?
Just because as we talk about funding, it just clicked into my head that we had that little discrepancy with the town of Narragansett about some funding, and I just wanted to know if somebody could give us a little update. I think,
Sure. I'll give an overview. Last year, the town of South Kingstown requested and budgeted for $101,000 from the town of Narragansett for their shared service with the senior center. Our senior center total budget's nearing $700,000, and it is truly a shared service for Narragansett because on any given program, there's about 1/3 of all the people that use that facility are Narragansett residents. So the way we used to bill was we would give them, it was quite a deal, it was $60,000 flat rate for the use of the building for their seniors, and we were charging them about $46,000 or so, $41,000 for the meals that we serve. We have a meal program that served, I think it was 38,000 meals in, no, it was 100-something thousand meals in 4 years, of which about 38,000 were for Narragansett residents. So it's a very robust meal program that the seniors love. In all fairness to Narragansett, they started their own lunch program, which they thought would either supplant or their seniors would transfer over. They really didn't. There were about 17 seniors from South Kingstown that went there for 17 total went there for lunches last year, 17 individuals, compared to approximately 1,500 or 1,600 individuals that came here for their lunches per year, individuals, not counting multiple times. So, but the money we get from federal funding, we really are not, we can't charge seniors, we can't turn away anyone, which we never would anyway. We would never turn away a senior. So Narragansett cut $46,000 in funding because they figured they started their own meal program, that we can't really ask people to pay for meals. But what it was for was paying the infrastructure for the meal program. It wasn't for the meals. It's such a large program. We have a cook, we have people serving, and we're usually shorthanded. So anyway, the bottom line is this. They offered to send a check for $55,000 to us. I did not accept it. I asked for the full amount of $101,000, which is the amount we budgeted last year, and it's really a bargain, no matter how you cut it. So we're working with the town manager and the senior services director there to get this money back for last year and moving forward to enter into an MOA with Narragansett that is a shared service, and they would pay a % of the use that their residents have. It has not been resolved yet. What I anticipate is working with the town manager there, their senior services person, and going in front of their town council and respectfully ask that the money be reinstated.
so when do you think you'll be at that stage to go to the town of Narragansett?
So we anticipate a meeting with their staff and our staff within a couple of weeks, and hopefully going to their town council. The president pro tem over there, Jill Lawler, heard about this, and she came and saw the senior center firsthand. And it's really pretty nice place to just walk into. There were 4 programs going on that one had to do with Medicare, one had to do with yoga, one had to do with history, and one was some dance thing that was going on there. I walked in, and every room I walked in, they said, "Hey, we have room if you want to come and join us." You know,
I knew you were dancing.
yeah, no, not dancing. They thought I was a senior that was trying to put my way in
You
there.
are a senior.
It really is a jewel in the crown in this town. It's a beautiful place. It can never be duplicated. I think Narragansett knows that. We just have to work out the logistics.
So I would like to come to that town council meeting in Narragansett, if you could just let me know.
Sure.
Thank you.
And we are resurrecting the Senior Advisory Council. Is that what we're calling it?
Yeah, it's Narragansett South Kingstown Senior Advisory Council, and we've always had a representative from the town council. It was Joe Veely, and then it was Deb Kelso. And so it's kind of been on hold over COVID and whatnot, so they're trying to get that revamped up.
I think the ask is going to be, and we'll have our solicitor look at it, is, about $100,000 a year, not breaking it down into meals, and just that would be the rate that we need to keep that place operational, and then, go up whatever small percent it would, 2%, 2.5% a year to cover the additional cost. But I'm very hopeful that we can work this out with Narragansett. The vice president was very impressed with the facility. She hadn't been there before.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you. Back again. I think the three returning council members are familiar with the Neighborhood Guild project. For our new council members, we have a $1 million bond that's been authorized for major improvements at the Neighborhood Guild facility that incorporate a whole number of infrastructure improvements at the Guild. This has been in the queue for a very many years. Mark and I are working to get this started. It's really to address infrastructure items like the HVAC system, new windows, the main entrance alcove, which is deteriorating quickly, fire protection and interior restoration of the building. As you all are very well aware, the Guild is a historic building within the town, and it has quite a long history in the town of South Kingstown, thanks to the Hazard family. And we have a $1 million bond. There's another $200,000 proposed that would come from the Guild fund balance. This is not tax supported. This bond would be paid from interest income on the Guild endowment fund, so that this would not have any impact on the tax rate. So we're looking forward to this. It's just another major project in the queue. This Mark's got quite a number of projects going on, as does the Parks and Recreation Department, but this really needs to start to move. So we're hopeful to get that going soon. Mark, do you want to add anything? Any questions? Next slide. And this is the first year that we are proposing funding for capital improvement program for the rec center. It has been open for 5.5 years now. It is heavily used. We are starting to see obvious, wear and tear. We could use a lot more money, but we realize that, we've got to start somewhere. So we're looking at things like repairing the floor in the gym, and also a freestanding sign for the corner of Broad Rock and St. Dominic. If you notice, we all know where it is, but there are many people who come to either have a game at the rec center, and there's no sign on the corner, so we are looking to be able to put an appropriate size sign so that people can actually find the rec center. And that's for $5,000. $15,000 is proposed for flooring repair. That's going to be an ongoing fund. The floor is the most valuable asset in the building. I mean, it has to be maintained, or we can't have our programs run in the building. So that's where we're starting with the rec center, is a request for $20,000 in 23-24. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Again, Rich Bourbonnais, I'm here to speak on the wastewater program. Our wastewater program is one of 3 enterprise funds that's housed in DPS, It would be this, the water system, and then also the Rose Hill Regional Transfer Station. The wastewater treatment facility has been in operation since 1976. Improvements to the treatment facility are by way of partnership with Narragansett and the University of Rhode Island. And the way the funds are spread, or the costs are spread across those partners, is looking at the respective flows, how much flow each of these organizations is using. And it kind of, and just to give you a little bit of background for those that are new, that the wastewater treatment facility itself deals with the three partners. The Kingston Pump Station is strictly University of Rhode Island in South Kingstown. Primarily University of Rhode Island. They are the primary users of that pump station in Kingston. The Silver Lake Pump Station is the University of Rhode Island in South Kingstown, but primarily South Kingstown, because most of South Kingstown's flow goes there once it gets there. You know, University of Rhode Island is relatively watered down by that point, but the pump station at Kingston is very important to URI. So the types of improvements that we're hoping to do, the building itself at the wastewater treatment facility is again from the 70s. We're hoping to address some of the windows that are at the facility and upgrade the windows. The total cost of we're proposing $150,000 this year over a 3-year period to be funded over 3 years. The total cost we're anticipating about $450,000. Presently, we're showing that, of the $150,000, 54 would be assessed to South Kingstown users, and also I should add that the enterprise funds are funded fully by the users of those particular funds, by the ratepayers. So 54,000 in this case would be funded of that 150. But I'd like to point out that if it's a 3-year funding period, when the funding is all available through this process, we would use the rates at that time. The rates do change. The flows do change over time, but generally we are always looking at the treatment facility, that 35 to 40% range is normally what we'll see. So we can assume that of the $450,000, I think conservatively, we would be looking at 40% of that would come from our ratepayers. The telemetry and the control upgrades, the SCADA system, supervisory control data acquisition, it's the same type of system we use it's very similar to what we use for our water system. These are the systems that keep track of flow and volume and all those types of things, and they're always in need of upgrade, software changes and things like that. So we'd like to apply $30,000 to that. The evaluation report, we generally look at all of our smaller collection systems, but this is more related to the larger system, which is there's a main trunk line that goes all the way from Kingston all the way down through and over to the Silver Lake. We'd like to have that entire system inspected. It's a very large diameter pipe, 21, 24 inches, somewhere in that range. And what we're inspecting for is water infiltration, things like that. We're looking to see those are things that we'd like to reduce when we can, because that's what increases our use at the treatment plant, that is unnecessary flow, particularly during rain events or when the groundwater gets too high. So those are the types of things we're looking to correct with that inspection. The collection system maintenance, equipment, this $100,000 that we're showing here, I believe it might be reduced to 50 as part of the final budget on this, but and it may become multi-year. But what this is specifically dedicated to is a JETA system that will allow us to clean pipes efficiently. This would be 100% a town of South Kingstown. That way we can use it, town-wide on different things. Generally, we try to do that when we can because we, particularly things like the camering system and the Jetta, those are things that we like to use on other systems. And I believe, and then GIS upgrades, those are fees that are assessed through our GIS department to help maintain our GIS systems. We have a very good, what I think is a very good database of information with all of our infrastructure is shown, every catch basin. We're hoping to grow that to include clean-outs, check valves, things like that. So those are things that will happen. You'll also see that happening as part of our asset management software, our Beehive software. You'll see those systems integrated with that. It's kind of nice to have all these different, different methods for us to track information and find information. But that's what I have for wastewater. Any questions on that? Okay. So another enterprise fund, our water system, again, we're looking at, and this is only one slide, our SCADA system, again, our way to monitor all these, the water levels, volumes, keeps track of what's happening in the tanks and everywhere in the system, all the conveyance. Water treatment reserve, these funds were primarily dedicated to there are times when we have a little bit of trouble with maybe water quality. Those funds are dedicated to making repairs as necessary to improve our water quality. The water main replacement reserve, we do have somewhat antiquated systems in some areas. Anything that was developed in the 70s or 80s is going to be most likely transite pipe or AC pipe, and we are routinely upgrading those pipes when we get a chance. So we've been regularly providing money into that fund, putting money into that fund so that we can make those improvements. And then a valve exercise machine. I know it sounds a little strange, but these valves take many, many turns in order to open and close, and it's good to have these machines. We are attempting to get on a schedule of regularly checking these valves so that we have fewer breaks in the future. Sometimes when you really got to get on a valve, you turn it and it can break, but if we're exercising them more rigorously, then I think, and we get on a program of that, we will have fewer problems in the long run. I think a system like that's going to help pay for itself in the long run, and then also GIS and upgrades. Okay. Any questions? Thank you.
Questions for Rich? All right, thank you, Rich. All right, that's going to bring us to the end here. Jim, you have something there? No?
Just a very exciting presentation, Rich.
It was his first one.
He could ask for anything, we would have given it to him, because we don't
It
understand.
was your first time, Rich. It was your first time, because John was here the last time. This is your first time? Yes. When you speak, I hear John Schock. I'm like, oh, cicada machine.
All right, we've reached the end here, but I do want to give an opportunity if anyone in the audience does wish to come up and speak on this. I ask you to come on up. As our usual, we just limit you to 5 minutes, and we just ask you to identify yourself.
Yeah.
So, Greg, if you want to come up,
Come on,
the
Greg.
opportunity. All right.
Is there anything you're wondering about, Greg? Come on. You can have 2 minutes. Nah, 2. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I am the only one. I expected Doral here, actually. I think you guys did a great job, all of you. I think you're really conscientious on how you were trying to spend money. It's a pleasant surprise. So, good job.
Thank you, Greg.
I got 4 more minutes.
All right, any final thoughts from council members before we close out here?
Nope.
All right, I'll just advise everybody that we have a public hearing on the CIP January 23rd, so just want to advertise that out. But other than that, we have a meeting next Monday, so good night, have a good weekend, and see you then.